partnership between my company, Digital Venture Partners, and Black Enterprise, where every week I have a conversation with prominent Black and Brown executives who are making inroads in cannabis for more of us to come into the space and find success. This week with me, I have two beautiful, powerful women from the People's Ecosystem, which is a wide-ranging portfolio company that operates in multiple states, operates in multiple markets, and more importantly, they go out of their way to create some type of bridge for more of us to come in and find information into the space. So I have with me Frederika and Melanie. How you ladies doing today?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having us.
No, we actually had a previous interaction at MJ BizCon at Las Vegas where we did an in-person interview, which was amazing, but we had a little bit of technical difficulty on our end. So I'm honored to have another conversation to get even more information from you ladies. I would love for, starting with Frederika, for you to give us a quick intro of yourself and kind of what was your professional resume before you jumped into the cannabis space full time.
Okay. I'm Frederika Easley, originally from Buffalo, New York, now residing in Austin, Texas. And so prior to coming into cannabis for over a decade, I worked in labor, actually for the second largest teachers union. And so I worked my way up from being an organizer. Actually, I would say throughout all of the promotions I received, I was always an organizer, but and through title, worked my way up from an organizer to the director of organizing for our K-12 PSRP division, as well as nurses and healthcare professionals. And so along that road, dealt with campaigns, both the building and the managing of campaigns, both internal, external, political. So that's negotiating contracts, that's, building coalitions with community, that's building, national task force. Lastly, national task force that dealt with the healthcare inequities in our healthcare system, both those that are felt by those who are employees of that system, as well as those receiving services, and sat on a number of boards and on committees that dealt with racial injustices and in both our institutions or in wide ranges of institutions. So I guess that would be a little bit about me.
And Melanie?
Yeah, so my background is born and raised Albuquerque, New Mexico, moved away to college, went to Portland State, moved to Portland, Oregon. And on the flip side of what Frederika was doing, I was doing on the media side. So I owned a handful of community publications that worked in the Latino, the LGBTQ, and so the mainstream motorcycle community, because when you're a brown girl in New Mexico, Oregon, you might as well. On that side, for 25 years, reporting on all of the different labor issues and things like that. Had a bunch of .coms, and then peripherally worked with kind of the People's Ecosystem as they were building. Always keeping in contact with Christine and Charlene and all of their efforts. And actually, the reason I'm here is Frederika. I had sent a proposal to the People's Ecosystem, and she shared it with Christine, who I've known for a long time. And she's like, I could tell she's one of your friends. And a few days later, there was conversations, and they brought me on board the team as originally the director of managed services. I got to work very quickly, and 5 short months later, they promoted me to COO of the ecosystem.
Right, and I was really struck by both of you once I met you because you have such strong personalities, but more importantly, you both speak from a place of information and good faith. I think in cannabis, we have this issue where people just say things that sound good, or there's like a lack of really valid, valuable information, right? For people, especially those of us coming into the space who don't really know the first thing yet. I would love for you to tell our viewers about the People's Ecosystem and kind of what's the mission statement of the company and why you're such a valuable resource for Black people and brown people in the space.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been here the longest, Frederika, so you want to go for it first?
Sure. So the People's Ecosystem, listen, literally the statement started from the bottom, but now we're here, that applies. The People's Ecosystem, AKA the People's Dispensary, started out in Oakland, California in a closet, right? They successfully transitioned from the legacy market, and we're gonna keep the title legacy market because we know that it's there are attempts to appropriate it, at this time, but from the legacy market, transitioning into the legal market. And so the people's ecosystem has both a plant touching and a non-plant touching side. And we are run by three badass women. One is on here with me, but Christine De La Rosa, who is our CEO, Charlene Kaabai, who is our CIO, and Melanie Davis, who is our COO. And so, BIPOC, women owned and led, who really put, where their mouth is in terms of how are we educating and how are we uplifting those who, people of color and women who want to engage in the cannabis industry. How are we making sure that the mistakes, or I would say the lessons that were learned by our leaders, are not repeated? I think that that's an important thing, is that each one teach one, and how are we putting it forward? And so one of the things that made it an easy decision to come on and work for this company was just that. The engagement with community, the commitment to educating, the commitment to helping and to advocating for people, honestly, who look like me, who look like, I'll stop there. I'll let Melanie kind of go over to the plant touching side, because she was knee deep in the launching of our line that has recently come out, which is thebomb.com. So Melanie, I'm gonna throw it to you, boo.
So really, when we look at cannabis, people are recognizing that it's important to help people who have been affected by the war on drugs. These opportunities we could have accomplished many other times throughout history. We could have made sure everybody was well cared for with wheat. We could have done this with corn. We could have done this with any major crop, but the line has finally been drawn when the US government and the world leaders signed on to declare war on its people, in particular brown and Black people. And that's what's created this global war on us. So in the cannabis space, what we've done within the people's ecosystem is taken this opportunity to reclaim our ancestral alchemy and medicine. And we do that by making sure that we can bring hashish, the world's first concentrate, and our brand, with it. So it's Smoke This. It's our ancestral medicine. It's solvent-free, solvent-less. Our pre-rolls are pretty amazing. Smoke This. So sativa, the flowers, sativa hash, all that good stuff. And then we're able to turn around, and then we're able to reinvest in by businesses, women-led businesses, support our veterans, and really start to realize the potential of the plant, because there's so many regulations around it, and everybody wants to basically top the plant before we even realize the full potential of it. Absolutely. And so I really believe, as a COO, our goal is to restore the balance, the abundance the plant has to offer the people. And at the end of the day, that's what we try achieving in every we do.
And Andrew, if I can just say, so the role that I play in the ecosystem as the Director of Strategic Initiatives is specifically looking at legislation, policy, rules and regs with an equity lens, right? And it's important that we differentiate between equity and equality. People try to use those words interchangeably, but they do not mean the same thing, right? So like equity is everyone getting exactly what they need. Take, for instance, if you and I were in front of a fence and we're trying to see over it to a ball game. Okay, I'm 5'1", so fun size. Let me just point that out. I'm fun size, okay? So, the stool that I need at 5'1" is going to be different than the one that you may need at whatever height you are. I know you're taller than me, so I'm just using that. So what you need is different than what I need, right? And so equity is making sure that we all get exactly what we need. Equality is everyone getting the same thing. And so it's important that we differentiate that. So when I look at language, I'm looking at how it can be strengthened so that it's promoting equity, not equality. And also where are areas where harm can be repurposed. And that that's not speaking to intention of whoever the creators, the writers are, but that is just saying that a lot of times when we go from theory into practice, when we put words into practice, that there are unintended consequences, or there can be unintended consequences. And so if you if you are not a person of color, and we say cultural humility instead of cultural competency, I don't need you to be competent in terms of my culture and like my experiences. I don't expect you to be, but cultural humility. And there's a blind side that a lot of people have, and especially a lot of our policymakers who don't look like us, they have no idea in terms of some of the bias that we experience. And so we need to make sure that language that's introduced takes all of that into consideration, takes the full experience of Black, Latinx, Indigenous people, women into consideration. And so that is primarily, what I do.
Right. And I want to follow up, starting with Melanie, with a bit of a philosophical question, because I've been in this space for almost 4 years now, right? And I was fortunate enough to meet both of you for the first time at MJ Biz, which is a huge conference in Las Vegas, right? And just listening to both of you speak, you can tell that you are just as informed, if not more, than any man who's in the space. But over the past year or so, all data points to the amount of women executives or owners or co-founders in cannabis shrinking, right? So why do y'all think that is? Because there has to be at least tens of thousands of other women who will be just as capable or just as successful as you are, given the right opportunity. Why do y'all feel like the number of women who are owning cannabis companies is shrinking instead of growing as we expand?
Go on, boo.
So I'm going to gently say this, but it's got to be pretty intimidating for the patriarch to see somebody like myself or Frederika come into the room and to be able to instantly understand that we are probably smarter than them in this space. We have the ability to move quicker than them in this space. So I get it can be intimidating, but that's because people continue to look at this industry as they would any other commodity industry in that same competitive playing field. Whereas many people of color, and speaking specifically from my community, we've grown up in a matriarch. I mean, thousands of years of having a strong matriarch. So to have a CEO, a COO, to have a CIO, a CFO telling you how your money's going to be spent and you better save up for college and stuff like that. I mean, we're used to that. And we know that's how the job gets done.
Absolutely.
So.
And Frederika, before you follow up, my grandma always said being a Black woman is like having to be Black twice, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're discriminated as a Black person, and then on top of that, you're discriminated against as a woman, right? So how do you feel like we can empower more Black women specifically to not only come into cannabis, because anybody can come into anything, right? But how do we actually sustain women ownership, help women raise capital, help women expand into multiple markets, and hold more prominent positions in the space?
So first of all, shout out to your grandma. She is absolutely correct. And I'll say personally, it doesn't just feel like twofold. It doesn't feel like I have the weight of being Black and I have the weight of being a woman. I also have the weight of being a darker complexioned woman. And I also have the weight of being a natural woman. And I also have the weight of being a full figured, or I would say a thick chick, you know what I mean? And so, and I'm sorry, I'm having a mommy moment, mommy brain and blanking, but there is a Black woman who coined the term of intersectionality, right? And so there are so many layers to this weight that women, and specifically Black women, carry. So I just kind of point that out. In terms of how we bring more sisters in and how we retain that talent, one of the things that Melanie mentioned was competition, right? We have to look at bringing different people into the space as an opportunity, as opposed to competition, because when you have a diverse table, what you have is the opportunity to expand and to grow, because you have different opinions, you have different viewpoints all coming to the table, things that, those who are normally there may not have thought of, whole consumer bases, right? That people may not tapping into because they don't have the insight. They don't know how, they don't know the lingo, they don't know what they care about. And so it's really an opportunity, and something that data has even shown that companies that have diverse decision-making bodies actually do well. Specifically for Black women, I would say in terms of retaining us, it would be recognizing the whole of us, and also not tokenizing us. As I said, one of the things that made it easy for me to decide onto the people's ecosystem was that I was not the only woman in the space. I was not the only woman of color in the space. And so what that meant was that, one, I did not have this burden, this additional weight of always having to be that voice, right? Like having to be the voice of women or the voice of Black people, as if we're a monolith, as if my experience, matched my sister next to me, and we know that that's not the case. So one, that. Two, I think recognizing the totality of us, specifically women, those who are mothers, and the fact that we are caregivers is something that has to be noted. Because for women, especially those who, like I said, are caregivers or mothers, because everyone does not make the decision to bring life, or maybe cannot bring life. But what happens is we make a lot of decisions, we make a lot of choices that are often to our professional detriment, to care for others, oftentimes not caring for ourselves. And so there is a culture of understanding around that. When there is a culture of support, meaning like, hey, if you have something extra to do, I can pick up your slack, because I know that at some point the favor is going to be returned. That really helps to feel comfortable and to feel grounded in the space.
Right. And I always tell people, even just outside of cannabis, but I think in today's business model, the idea of competition is outdated, right? Why would you want to put Amazon out of business and take on their cost, right? When you can collaborate with them, put your product on Amazon and make money with them, right? And I think it's that way in cannabis also, right? We can figure out more ways to collaborate and bring capital to both of us than assume that only one of us can make money, right? And so my next question for Melanie is, I would love for you to kind of speak on the ways women can come into cannabis, because I think for those on the outside, I believe you'll probably agree, a lot of people on the outside looking in think you have to come in through cultivation or through retail, right, to be in the cannabis space. What are some ways that women can come in and contribute their vantage point and expertise to our industry outside of just touching the plant?
There's
But just to note that Melanie is a cultivator. That was interesting that you pointed that one out.
I know she is. Yeah, I know she is. We had a conversation around it in Vegas. So yeah, I think she's very, because even being a cultivator, she has to work with many people who aren't cultivators, right? So I want her to kind of speak on, like, you don't have to do what Melanie does to work with Melanie, right? So what are ways women watching can actually come into the space outside of just touching the plant?
There's so many different ways. I mean, that are just outside of trying to figure out how to get your packages product. There's the actual packaging. There's the branding. There's the naming, the R&D. There's, just bringing the different SOPs. Actually supplying the products, the actual packaging themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I know of any BIPOC or women-led companies that are actually fully supplying, full on, packaging and stuff like that. I love to be proven wrong. So there's advertising, there's marketing, there's PR. We need every other business out there. Shipping, receiving, all the ancillary businesses are required in this space. So whatever your business is, really just figure out how you can modify it and include cannabis so you don't miss that money. If you're already a business, just figure out right now what you can do. You know how we do. We turn one potato into two potato every freaking day. You know what I mean? So you're already running your business. You look like us. Just look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's on the table. Let me just bring that over here and family, you know, and that's really what it's going to take. And bring that innovation because we need it.
And moving forward, as we wrap up, we have a few minutes left. I would love for y'all to kind of speak on what you have planned for 2022 and what our viewers can kind of look forward to seeing from the People's Ecosystem.
That's Frederika. She's got, I mean, first quarter 2020. I mean, she's
And also if you'll mention your podcast so they can get even more information outside of just Black Enterprise.
Yeah. So look, a lot of stuff coming pipe. First and foremost, you know, myself, Melanie is my co-host, but we have a podcast and newsletter that are both titled The People Are Blunt, where we talk about all things, you know, straight talk, no chaser, that are associated with the cannabis industry. And so, you know, amazing things coming down the pipe with that. Actually, you know, expanding from just an internal operation, Andrew, you know, like how y'all do. When I grow up, I want to be like y'all. But we are now having interviews. So we get y'all on, we got to get you on, we got to get Ryan on, most definitely. But yeah, so we have that coming down. You know, we have some exciting things that can't speak specifically about them yet, but involving the Super Bowl. So stay tuned for that. Melanie, what else we got?
Like, is it too soon for my Heisman post? Exactly. I'll wait on that. We'll pause on that. We just dropped 54 products. The Smoke This product line. This is available right now in California. We have our Moon Rocks diamond infused hash, diamond and hash infused. And I think I've already shared that it's strain specific. So indica, hybrid, you know, sativa. We're looking at expanding our footprint. So not only in California, but expanding to other markets where adult use is regulated. And just a few other things that Frederika does. She changes the words in people's mouths. I like to point that out because people all the time are saying like legacy to legal. Legacy to is BS because it's regulated. Cannabis is not legal. So it just drives me nuts when people are using that legal and it's like they drop some veil or try to hypnotize us in some kind of way. Anyways, so she keeps changing the language in people's mouths, which I appreciate. Other things that are coming out in 2022. Oh my God, we have a lot.
I have one question, partly for the viewers, mostly for myself. What are some other women-owned brands in California that you all work with or respect their business model? Because I don't think that gets covered enough, if any that come to mind.
I mean, so specifically in Cali, you know, you have Josephine and Billy's that recently, you know, who recently had their grand opening. You have Aaron Gore of Garden Society, who is doing major things out that way. I'm gonna flip over to Chicago because I love my Hush Ladies. Now they are ancillary business, right? Like, so they do event planning. They have amazing events out there. So I definitely have to shout out Vanessa and Kay. You have the ladies of Pretty and Posh out of Sacramento, who we also met at MJ BizCon. You know, who are coming out with their line. Yep, you got it right there, the sticker, Pretty and Posh. So they're coming out with their line. I, you know, would be remiss to not shout out Tucky from Blunts and More, from our brother. We love him, the Ball family. Love those guys. Chris and Chuck had an opportunity to chop it up with them at MJ BizCon.
from Minorities for Medical.
Roz McCarthy.
Yeah,
has
Roz
just
McCarthy has
launched.
just dropped some products.
Yep.
Black Buddha, correct?
Black Buddha. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So shout out to her. You know, what else? The other thing I want to flag just in terms of legislation is that, you know, we have safe banking that passed the House for the 5th time. And so it is now attached to the military bill. And so, you know, in December, they're going to be ramping up efforts, you know, just trying to get that passed. Now, like, in the spirit of transparency, this bill is not perfect, you know. This bill, you know, in terms of on the people's ecosystem feelings, that the bill does not have some of the guardrails that are necessary to make sure that, you know, when it passes, that, you know, Black, Indigenous, Latinx people are actually going to be able to like reap the fruits of this labor. Like, the reality is, historically, we've been discriminated against in our financial system with those institutions. And so just the passing of this bill does not mean that the road is easier for us, right? And so, but cannabis needs a win, right? Cannabis needs a win. There's this huge push of comprehensive, you know, language that's coming from Booker, Schumer, and Wyden. And, you know, but we know that the votes are not there in the Senate. And so, you know, what needs to happen is that we got to move forward. So, you know, let's push safe banking through, and then let's also make sure that we are fighting for them to immediately add guardrails, add, you know, different provisions in place, or put different provisions in place to protect and to make sure that financial institutions are held accountable, and that, you know, there is data in real time that is being pulled in terms of who is actually given or how people are awarded these loans and things of that nature. So we know that's coming down the pipe. We just had new legalized legislation come out called the State Reforms Act. And this was actually by a Republican, fairly new representative. And so we're going to be looking into that, digging into that. One of the things I noticed was that it does not mention equity at all. It doesn't mention, you know, repairing of harms, but it does give, you know, allow states to have their rights, to retain their rights. And you know, there's some other things in there. So we're digesting that. It was just released probably yesterday, maybe. So we're digesting that. But yeah, so a ton of things that I would just implore people to make sure they're paying attention. Check us out. You know, we report on this stuff in our newsletter and on the podcast, but we have to advocate. We have to advocate, and we have to make sure that our stories, our narratives are out there so that they can be a part of this process. They can be a part of the language. The last thing that we want any lawmaker to say that they didn't know. Now, maybe maybe you ain't pay attention, but we don't want you to say that you didn't know. So I just wanted to plug that in there.
Okay, and really quickly, as we wrap up, where can our viewers follow y'all on social media, follow your podcast, and subscribe to your newsletter?
Awesome. So we are at, our website is thepeoplesecosystem.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias at thepeopleecosystem.com. Once you go to the website, there's also a prompt for you to sign up and subscribe for our newsletter. Our podcast is on YouTube. So please like and subscribe, go there, check out the episodes. You can see my baby making his appearance. Because he does that. I'm a working mom. It's a real thing. It is what it is. What else am I missing, Melanie? Am I missing something?
And at the end of the day, as a community, people who look like us, we don't have time to be shy about any of this. Yeah. This is a direct call to action. Yeah. What the language that Frederika puts out there, whatever, embrace it. I mean, because she talks about amnesty, not clemency. She talks about the hard issues that we need so they don't repurpose harm back into our communities. We have a very short window between now when safe banking and interstate commerce happens, and it's all hands on deck. Yeah. So please, pay attention to all credible messengers, in particular Frederika, because she's a boss.
Oh, thank you, boo. Likewise.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I can sincerely say you're both an encyclopedia of knowledge, experience, and you operate in good faith for people around you. You don't hold your knowledge away from people. You welcome people to find success as you're finding. So if we had 100 people in a space like y'all, we'll be all right. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing your success in 2022, and I look forward to speaking soon.